Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. So today we are talking about the hip hinge. This is gonna be part of a very informal series where I'm basically just breaking down really basic movement patterns. I've already done push-ups, I've already done squats, so definitely check those videos out if you have not already, but I think that it's really helpful to know why we do these basic things and to make sure that we are performing them correctly to reap the benefits. So in today's video, we are gonna talk about the benefits of performing a proper hip hinge. I'll show you what one looks like, and then we'll work through a progression to improve your hip hinge to make sure that you can safely add weight and do things like weighted good mornings and deadlifts. But let's hop on in. So why is the hinge important? There's a lot of different benefits. Number one, the hip is supposed to be a very mobile joint, but a lot of people do lack hip mobility because a lot of people do get kind of stuck in one position all day, whether you are someone who is standing all day or sitting all day. So we kind of lose a lot of that hip mobility. When we lose a lot of that hip mobility, this is when the knees and the back typically do start to take over a lot of the function. And I talk about this all the time, but with muscle imbalances or joint imbalances, something else has to compensate. And then another muscle or joint is taking on two jobs when it's only supposed to do one job. If you ever think about a time at work when you have one job and then you've been asked to do someone else's job too, and it's really freaking hard, and then you get burnt out and fatigued, that's what your joints are doing. So that is the number one reason why I like to make sure that we include hip hinges in every single one of our workouts. Another benefit, strengthening your posterior chain. So posterior basically just means the back of your body. Anterior means the front of your body. For a lot of people, we are very anterior dominant. We just live in a very anterior dominant world. So this is a great exercise to strengthen things like the glutes and the hamstrings and the back, and all of this, like we kind of already talked about, can really help alleviate knee pain and low back pain. And then finally, my favorite reason, it's just really functional. This is literally you bending over and picking something up. How many times have you done this in your life and you've like tweaked your low back? And a lot of times it's because we don't use a hip hinge in real life when we should. So making sure that we're including them in our workouts so that they do become a little more second nature is gonna be really helpful. So let's make it even more helpful and show you what a proper hinge is. All right, so our proper body weight hip hinge. Let's take the arms across the chest just to make sure that the shoulders are down and retracted, keeping the feet about hip to shoulder width apart. I'll turn to the side to show you our first one. From here, I want you to push the booty back. Pop the booty like we're trying to close a door with our butt. Chest stays open, pinning the shoulder blades together. Drive into the heels to come back up. So that one more time, send the hips back, try to close the car door, and coming back up. Noticing here that shoulders stay above the hips rather than dropping down. This is where you can see the low back starts to round. We want everything in that neutral spine. So that's our proper hip hinge. So let's go through a progression to get that strong. All right, I got my handy dandy anti-rape door jamb. No one's getting touched in this household. Okay, that was weird. So I recommend using something like a broom, but my broom's really gross, so I don't wanna bring it in here. So essentially, you're gonna take this, and I want you to hold it right behind the crown of the head, and then right by your tailbone. So essentially what we're trying to do is keep the back nice and flat as we hinge over. So again, close in the car door with your butt, and driving into the heels, coming back up. This is a great way just to show yourself if you start to round, because you'll see that door jamb, whatever you're using, comes away from the tailbone. So you really need to push the hips back, 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 back. Now you'll definitely feel a little pull in the hamstrings. That's totally okay. If your hamstrings are super tight, you can give me a little bit of a bend here. But remember, this is a hip dominant exercise, not knees. So I want you to go as far as you can with the hips first, and then take some knee bend if you need to. Remembering, again, shoulders never come below the hips. And now, oh God, that really hurt. Number two. So for this one, you can either use a wall or a door. The only door, I can't use a door, so we're gonna use the wall, which is fine. But I keep using this analogy of closing the car door with your butt. You can literally practice closing a door with your butt. So coming up toward your wall, taking about, I'd say like a footstep away from the wall. You can always change this as you feel how far back you can actually hinge. Again, hands across the chest or up by the ears. We press the hips back, trying to touch the butt to the wall, and then come back up. So over, you're gonna notice weight goes back in the heels. That's what we want here. Anytime that we're trying to work on that posterior chain, we wanna drive into the back of the foot rather than the front. So that's your next progression. And now, we're gonna go for a good old body weight hip hinge. So once you've progressed to that, now it's clear that you can maybe add some weight on. Again, you can totally do a weighted good morning, but we're gonna jump into some deadlifts. So there are many different ways to do a deadlift. There's a lot of different styles, but we're gonna focus on very simply the main two that you typically see, which are traditional and Romanian. So the big differences between a traditional and a Romanian deadlift: traditional deadlift, you are going to see more knee involvement, which means that we're gonna target more of the quads and the glutes. And then with a Romanian deadlift, or straight leg deadlift, or RDL as many people call them, this is gonna be less knee dominant and way more hip involvement. So that means that you will hit more of the hamstring. Both are great to practice. Honestly, it all depends on like your specific goals and what you're trying to program toward. So let's go through both. Now, obviously guys, using a bar is going to be a lot easier than using dumbbells, but there's something to be said about using dumbbells with a deadlift because you do have to manipulate now like each arm by itself. But if you are looking to really progress your weight in these, you definitely want to be using a bar. But I don't have a bar at home, so we're using dumbbells. So starting with our traditional deadlift, I like a little turnout in the toes, not so much sumo position, but just a little turnout, just like in my squats, to open up the hips and give me more place to go. So from here, we want to send the hips back first. Send the hips back until you can't go any farther. And I want you to reach down like you're trying to reach for the weights, and you can't reach them. So now you need to get the knee involved, coming down until you can reach those weights. Again, chest stays open, shoulders above the hips. Drive into the heels, and up. Noticing how close the weights are staying to my legs. I want you to think like you're shaving your legs with the weights. So from here again, hip hinge down, bend the knees as you need to. We can touch them at the bottom. I'm kind of crushing my toes, and then we're gonna come up. Again, I will say these weights kind of suck to deadlift with because they're very bulky and they crush my toes. But let's do one more like that. Sending the hips back, shaving the legs, bend the knees when you need to. Again, shoulders above the hips. Good. And same way to put them back down. And that's it. That's your traditional deadlift. Again, much easier with the bar, much easier when you're not navigating these giant dumbbells. And you can do the same thing with a kettlebell too. So let's move on to our RDL, or Romanian deadlift, or straight leg deadlift. Everyone calls it something different. So with this, I like to pick them up the same way. So again, sending the hips back, using the knees. Good, now we're up. Now, I like to straighten out the toes here. If you were doing a sumo RDL, that'd be different, but now I just wanna straighten out the toes. That's just my personal preference. So, toes directly toward the front. Again, we're shaving the legs. The weight does not leave the hands for this. Send the hips back, very little knee bend, just a micro bend, noticing that the shoulders are right above the hips. And back up, squeezing at the top. You can do lots of different tempos here. And by lots, I mean you can move slow in both directions, or you can go slow down, fast up, any other tempo. I don't typically use in this exercise, but again, this is going to be more for the hamstrings than for the glutes and quads. Now, with both of these exercises, with any of the exercises we just did, you will start to feel the low back working a little bit. That's okay. I always tell people, as long as you don't have like sharp stabbing pain, it's totally fine. Now, I would always recommend with these, if you don't have a trainer or someone watching your form, tape yourself. The last thing you want is like your back rounding and you're putting a lot of excess pressure, especially on the low back, because that's when you are gonna get injured. So if you are feeling a lot of pain in the back and you tape yourself and you realize that you're rounding, you know the aggressions now. You know how to make it a little bit easier. You know how to check your form. You gotta grab your don't rate me door jam, all right? All right. Oh, So that is pretty much it. I've got a few other of these videos planned coming up in the next few months, but let me know what other exercises you want broken down. The simple stuff is always the best stuff, guys. That is the stuff that makes us stronger for everyday life. So remember, you don't have to do all of these fancy things. You don't need to be doing 1,000 different types of burpees. Keep it simple and you can still get stronger. Any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.